This season of Shaped is brought to you by Gillette Labs, helping you look and feel your best with an unbeatable, smooth, clean shave. Available now at Chemist Warehouse.
Then it was the right decision. Now it was the wrong decision in hindsight. But I can't go back and I can't change that.
Steve Moneghetti, a renowned Australian long-distance runner and an esteemed sports administrator. But definitely, me growing up, I always saw you as a guy that was just willing to fight tooth and nail in the races that you held on to. And I actually remember my dad often speaking about someone who looked like they could run, and it was probably more from a footy point of view, but always going, oh, he's like Steve Moneghetti. Mm-hmm. So that was my introduction to your journey as an amazing Australian athlete. But let's go back to the early days.
Thanks for that intro. I appreciate that. And I admire your work too. It's been terrific and lovely to. I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to hearing more of your story outside of just the running, but the journey that you've been on through life. And that did start in Ballarat. You still reside there in your hometown. Mum, Wilma, Dad, Henry. Are they both still with us?
No. So Mum passed away about 6 months ago, so June last year.
Sorry to hear that.
And Dad's, she was 93. She had a wonderful life. And Dad's 98, would you believe? And
wow.
Interestingly, right now, so you have got a scoop because he was in hospital. He's now at rehab in Ballarat. And believe it or not, in all of his 98 years, he had never been to hospital until whatever that was, about 3 weeks ago, when he had a couple little falls at home. So, and he still lives independently at home. I'm not sure how much longer that'll be for, but and they were very instrumental in my career. I'm the youngest of 4 children, and Dad still lives in the same house that we grew up in, and there was absolutely no running ability in our family, absolutely none. I'm, got an older sister, a couple of older brothers, and they have no running background. So I was we're actually a cricketing family, and I was playing cricket and a bit of footy at North Ballarat, just down the road.
Were you a batter or bowler?
I was actually, I was captain, opened the batting and opened the bowling.
You
so
must
I
have
put
gone
myself
right
on. So I didn't wicket keep. I did everything else but wicket keep. But
you can't catch your own bowls, so if you're the opening bowler.
No.
That's hard to do.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do. And I'm not all that coordinated. I'm good in a straight line, but not so good sort of sideways. But so we're a cricketing family, and people know the story about Little Athletics. My dad took me down there, and I wasn't sort of good at much because I was a skinny little kid, and had a go at everything, as you've picked up. And anyway, I sort of never went back to Little Athletics. And then, fortunately, the next door neighbour of the house that, as I say, Dad's still in, he heard I was doing a bit of running at school. He used to run around just a block at home, and he said, "Oh, do you want to come out to a local running race?" And out I went. And so Mum and Dad, with no absolute history in distance running or any running, said, "Oh, you can go out, and if you have a bit of fun, just do it, and and if you like it, you can keep doing it." And that's exactly what happened. And I wasn't that good. Apparently, I was actually pretty good in that race, but I wasn't really that good as a kid in Ballarat. And everyone at school says, "Oh, yes, you were." But it took me a while, just as the distances got longer, for me to sort of find my place. But Mum and Dad always supported me, and they didn't care. Mum was as happy when I won a Ballarat championship as when I went to the Olympics. As long as I was happy, she didn't care. So they never interfered. And as a parent, I'm kind of myself, now, and grandparent, you try to take that lesson where they supported, but they didn't interfere.
Yeah.
And that, they're only 4 words, but shit, Trent, they are a really important 4 words.
And having young kids myself now, I do see the parents that are almost living their own sporting careers or failed sporting careers through their children again.
Yes. And you don't, because you've done it, which is interesting. And, we've got 4 children ourselves, and Tanya and I, and they're interested in sport, but they're not great sports people. And I think that just encouraging them to be involved in sport, because we don't care if they're successful or not. That's up to them. But as long as they're enjoying, there is nothing better than the learnings you get out of sport. So we've encouraged them all to be involved in sport, but with no
teamwork, camaraderie, dealing with losing
loss,
or winning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Being humble.
Yeah, humble in victory and whatever and all that, and fierce in defeat and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Well, speaking of humble, I mean, you can go through so many of your achievements. Let's go to the entry of your international running career, the 1986 Commonwealth Games.
Mm-hmm.
You entered the 10,000 metre run, came 5th.
Yep.
And then marathon.
Yep.
Bronze.
That's right, yeah.
Just for people who, I mean, running is a big sport. It's probably bigger than it's ever been.
Absolutely, right now it is, yep.
Your PB, which we can get to or we can touch on now, 2:08.16. That's an average of 3 minutes and 2 seconds per kilometre or thereabouts.
Yep.
I think it's somewhere in between that and 3:03. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah, you're a good man.
What was your PB in the 10,000 metre?
I ran 27:47. And on that day, so the great story about that Commonwealth Games in 86 was I qualified for the 10K so I just made the team and I was kind of just focused on being a 10K runner. And about 3 months before, my coach, Chris Wardlaw, who's still mentor and great friend of mine now, he looked at the team and saw there was a spot in the men's marathon because every country's allowed to have 3. We only had 2. He said, look, I'll chat to Athletics Australia, see if I can get you in the marathon. And they said, yeah, that's fine. I was already over there. Wasn't going to cost them anything extra. So I ran the 10K on the Saturday night, ran 5th, as you pointed out, and ran about the qualifying time, 28 minutes. So sort of, 250K pace. And then...
Makes me feel sick, that speed.
Yeah, well, and that's, and I was 5th in the race. So it was pretty competitive.
And just to cut you off, and we'll get to entering into the marathon, but... For people listening or watching, I've played with some elite runners in AFL terms, and for a 2K time trial around a grass track, they might, I think there's other clubs where there's been guys that break 6 minutes and they might be 10 or 15 seconds under 6 minutes. Our guys were always around kind of 6 minutes, and that's an average of obviously 3 minutes per K.
Yeah.
You guys are holding on to these speeds for long periods of time. Like, it actually blows my mind. I was never a naturally gifted runner. I tried hard and was okay and got by. But it blows my mind the way that you can train and then run and perform at a threshold that is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's the advantage of that's my strength is that, you would smash me over 100 metres, smash me over 200, smash me over 400, and then we'd close down at probably about 800. But the interesting thing is I can hold that differential for such a long period of time. And I actually say to people say, oh, you became one of the best distance runners in the world. Well, I didn't ever think like that. All I did was I just enjoyed running longer distances. And I find that I didn't slow down as much as the next person. Yeah. So before you knew it, I was kind of further up in the field. And I significantly remember running. I was a 17-year-old. There was no under 17 race. Sorry, there wasn't no. Was I 17? There was no under 18 race. So I had to run in the open race at a run at Gels Park, and all the other kids. I was sort of 3rd or 4th best as an under 18 athlete. And I got into this open race and it was 16K, pretty muddy, and I was just running with these big boys. I remember this one guy, Rob Nayland, looking at me as if to go, no, you're not allowed. You're not meant to be here. What are you doing? And I finished about 8th in that race. And it was just that the distance was longer. And I smashed all the guys who were better than me in my age group just because the distance was longer. And I never had any trouble with that extra distance. And obviously the longest Olympic distance for running, it was a 50K, although they're moving that to a 42.2K walk as well. So the longest Olympic distance was a marathon. So that was naturally what I gravitated to.
Well, I do have some news to break to our listeners. I am running a marathon middle of this year. So any tips for me will be helpful. I am doing it to raise money for brain cancer.
Good on you. Yeah.
It's in South Africa on a very different kind of terrain with animals.
Oh, right. Wow.
And apparently they're attracted to movement, so I'm trying to run it as slow as I can.
I'd be running fast with these animals if you're getting chased by a tiger, mate.
I just need to make sure I'm faster than the person next to me.
Yes,
and just if there is
that's
one chasing,
rule.
it's just maybe a little cheap one in the knee or something like that. But
Yeah.
for the average Joe who does love their running and wants to go out there and have a crack at a marathon,
Yeah.
I know that you do a lot of coaching and mentoring with elite athletes, but also there would be so much in the way that you coach and teach and educate that would help someone like me who's going out there to attack their first long distance run.
So the piece of advice probably is just finish it. So don't tell people a time, because that will put undue pressure on you. But also what I like to say, and I hadn't covered the distance in that first marathon that I did, and most of my training, I ran 35K. I'd run another 10K that night. So I did 45K on a Sunday most days, most weeks, but it was in 2 runs. I'd never covered the distance. But what I recommend you do is, even if you walk or just spend time out, be out there longer than you think you're going to be out there. So if it's going to take
time on legs, more so
time on
than
legs, absolutely.
how fast you're running.
Yeah, 4 hours it's a long time to be on your legs, just that amount of time. So people train, they get up to 30K and they've probably done that, in 3 hours. But that last hour, if they're going to take 4 hours, and that last 12K you're getting very fatigued, and mentally to have known you've been on your feet for that long is, I think, a really important lesson. So try and do that. I often say to people, just get your partner to pick you up, 35K down the road, and you have a picnic or a barbie or a coffee at the end of it, but you just get there and it takes you as long. And if you have to have a walk and all that, that's fine, but you're not under any time pressure. Someone will pick you up and you're at the end, and you're going, you're not going to stop until you get there.
And you're not going around in circles
doing
your head in.
Yeah, I like you're heading to a destination as well, which is also mentally
they are
just helps.
Very, very good tips.
Tell
me about representing Australia though. Like, for a young guy, you come into the fold, you're not necessarily the best runner that Australia's ever seen at the time.
No, it wasn't. Absolutely not.
And you had to work really hard to get to where you ended up getting to.
Yeah.
What's it like representing your country in something that you just love going out and doing?
And I still talk about that now, that, when I'd get to the hard part in something like an Olympic marathon, I would look down at the crest on my singlet and just think, I'm not just, I'm really hurting personally here, but it's not about me. I'm running for my country, so I'm going to push through that pain. So you grow an extra leg, or that incentive of running for your country meant so much to me. And, I slightly get disappointed with people who probably choose other events, or they don't kind of respect what wearing an Australian singlet does for you. And, you've never done that, because in your sport, you can't run for your country, or compete for your country. So for me, it's something that I really have always held in the highest regard. And I did 22 marathons in my career. 12 of them were for my country for $0. And I don't care about, never worried. And if I had my life, I'd do 22 for nothing. So it didn't worry me, because that memory and looking back and knowing that on that stage, in a situation, you can train all you like for 20 years of your life. Once you're on the start line of Olympic Games or Commonwealth Games or World Championship marathon, you are, it's you and that event. And to be able to do that and do the best you can and cross the finish line in a marathon and go, I ran the best I possibly could for my country, that is a satisfaction that's far greater than any personal satisfaction you can have in your life.
Yeah. I still remember my first razor. It was a Gillette, because it was the brand that everyone trusted. Back then, it was a safe bet, but now it's even better. The new Gillette's Labs razor has the best blades yet. A flexible disc that contours your face for incredible comfort and an unbeatably smooth shave. Pick one up at your nearest Chemist Warehouse today. Speaking of your running career, what was the lowest moment in it for you personally?
Oh, I keep saying absolutely, but the Olympic, I went to 4 Olympic Games, and 3 of them were pretty
88,
good.
88, 92, 96 and 2000.
And in 92, I was one of the best marathon runners in the world. I'd won Berlin. I'd come off some really good half marathon, held some world records for the half marathon, or world bests, as they were then. And so I was definitely in the top 5 marathon runners in the world. And I ran the Olympic Games in Barcelona and finished in 48th place. and it's kind of the only real disappointing run I had out of the 22 marathon. So that's the one that sticks in my mind, is the tough day. And the tough moment in that was we're halfway, so running, we started out at Barcelona, we were running into the stadium, and at about halfway there's a massive pack. We weren't going that hard, and it was pretty warm and pace was pretty casual. And just through halfway, so there's about 50 of us in the lead pack, there was a surge and the pack sort of went, and I couldn't respond. And I'm thinking, wow, this is not good. And that realisation that my aspiration of winning an Olympic medal, which I thought I was in a position to do, was suddenly running down the road, was unbelievably difficult for me mentally because I just wanted to stop on the side of the road and have a cry.
So how do you wrestle with that? I mean, you're saying you're halfway through, so between 20 and 25K into the race. Your dream of winning a medal in reality is running away from you right now.
Yep.
How do you compartmentalize that and still go, but for me, I still need to finish this as best I possibly can?
And that's where you do call in the training that you've done, and I had Chris, my coach, and Tanya, my wife, were out in the course and saying, pull out, you're just going to do. And I said, no, I'm not pulling out. This is the Olympic marathon. And it's strange and it sounds sort of like I'm patronising, but for me to finish that event was my proudest moment because it was so difficult to finish. Most of the other events, it was, I might have hit the wall in the last couple of K, or I had a really good run. I might have finished sixth when I thought I should have finished fifth. But in this circumstance, I was, I still ran 2 hours 23, but I was 10 minutes behind what I wanted to run. But for me, coming up, we ran up Montjuic, a big hill, into the stadium, and to actually still cross the finish line under really difficult circumstances when I was having an absolute shocker, I look back and I think, well, mate, I'm really proud that I battled through adversity, because anyone can battle when it's easy. When it gets tough, that's when you learn about a person's real conviction. And for me, that was genuinely, in good, bad or otherwise, I was going to represent my country as best as I could. I was never going to be pulling out of the Olympic marathon, let me tell you that. So if I had to crawl, I was still going to get there.
Would you say that that's been a pretty defining moment in your career from how you can then, whether it's a conversation you have with one of your 4 kids or kids that now you're educating on what it is to be an elite athlete? Like, has that helped you in going, you're going to have good days, you're going to have great days, you're going to have really bad days, but the way you actually consistently show up and put your best foot forward, pardon the pun, is more important than the actual result itself?
Yeah, well, it was a great learning experience. And the learning, interestingly, people think the learning was, your next race, you didn't do this, or you took your drinks early, or you didn't go to a hot weather place. That wasn't the learnings. The learnings was, for me, I thought my career was over. So I thought, I'm going to have to. So I got rid of my manager. I thought Nike were going to dump me. So I kind of thought I'm going to have to go back teaching and get a real life again. And I went home and I went through all of those stages, and I found, Nike was still wanting me, and people were still inviting me to races. And I suddenly thought, this actually is not that bad. And I sat down with my coach and my support team, and we had a bit of a chat, and we just reassessed where I was going. Said, look, we'll park the marathon for a little while. We'll go back and start running some half marathons and some other events. I got my confidence back. And as it turns out, my career took off. I won Commonwealth Games in 94, World Championships bronze medal in 97 in Athens, and had a fantastic 7 years. It was actually the best 7 years of my career. And yet at the time I thought it was all over. So the lesson for me was, it's your own self-perception, but I thought I was a loser. It suddenly went, one day I was the greatest Australian marathon runner, and next day I'm a loser. Well, that was only my perception. That wasn't, the public were really proud that I finished, and they said, you just had a bad day. You turn up next week, you'll be back, you'll be fine. So my perception of disappointment was not as balanced as what the public's was, and that was a good lesson for me. And, I embraced that and became a good athlete again and a better person.
I mean, when we're young and we're athletes, your whole world is your profession. And maybe for some that doesn't ever change. Did you attach your self-worth to the results that you were getting those early days?
I did then, because I'd become what I term a professional athlete. I mean, I was still working for the education department, but it was kind of pretty loose, more an ambassador I wasn't teaching face to face. And I did an engineering degree, so I was an engineer, and then I did a teaching course on the back of that, and I taught for a couple of years in the 80s. And then in 89, there was a defining moment when I'd come off the fifth at the 88 Olympics, and London Marathon rang me and my agent up and my manager, Stephen, and said, look, we'll give you 50 grand and a couple of airfares to come and run in the London Marathon. At the time, I was earning about 40 grand as a teacher. So I suddenly thought, wow, someone wants to pay me to travel around the world. I made that decision to go, and I reckon that was when I became a professional athlete. Then that meant I was defined by my running and my results, because that's what I turned up and did every day. It was a business for me. And whilst I did still have that engineering and teaching degrees behind me, I didn't think I was going to ever or not use them in this next 10 years, which, as it turns out, that's exactly what happened. So and it's a lesson, and it's a lesson that I look back on and think I was completely defined by my results and me as a runner. Yeah. No one knew me as a person.
Yeah.
And that distinction is a really dangerous place to be in, because it's a fabrication.
Yeah.
We're all normal human beings, but at the time I was seen to be this superhuman running machine that was representing Australia.
I think you're superhuman.
Yeah, well, yes. But it's not real.
Yeah.
And and if there is a lesson out there for people, people, they'll always be patting you on the back and telling you how good you are. If you believe that, then non-reality becomes reality.
Yeah.
And that's a very dangerous place to be in. And luckily I had good people around me who could just balance that out for me.
As part of the transition from finishing up, last performance was the Sydney Olympics, home crowd. Must have been an amazing feeling.
Was it ever?
Who were the key people outside of, you've touched on your wife, Tanya, and the kids, obviously, but who were the most important people in the transition from being the professional athlete to then going back to being a normal human being?
Yeah, and that is a really good question. Probably I've mentioned Chris Wardlaw as my coach and my life mentor. He balanced a very successful athletics career and then athletics administrator with being a high-powered educationalist and high level in the education department here in Victoria and then in Hong Kong, as it turned out. So he always had a perspective on life.
Yeah.
So he was always very strong in the transition. There was also, I'm not sure people won't know Perry Crosswhite, but he was the head of the Commonwealth Games Association, as it was ACGA as it was then, and he wanted to keep me involved in the sport. So he he offered me some positions within sports administration that I didn't know why, and the state government as well with the Victorian Institute of Sport. And I was doing some leadership stuff within the team at the end of my career, but the fact that they realised that I had some capacity to be a leader in sports administration, not defined by just my running, was really significant for me. And that's what Chris and some people in Ballarat, Pete Howley, my physio, and my family were very supportive in allowing me to take time to move into what was life after athletics, or life after running, which can be a really difficult transition, and you can't put a time on it. I got some opportunities. As I say, sports minister rang me up and said, "Look, we'd like you to be involved in the Victorian Institute of Sport." So but I didn't have to say yes to them.
Yeah,
it was me ultimately that made the decision, but that was with the full support of my family and those people around me, and it meant I'd just come out of public life, and yet I was going to stay in public life. But the benefits of that, they could see the benefits in me giving back to the sport, but also just being happy to stay involved. And so they supported me in that.
In some of those sports administration roles, I mean, there was the mayor of the Com Games, there was the chef de mission.
Chef de mission, yeah.
Mission. And that was for quite a few occasions.
3 times, yeah.
Was there an imposter syndrome that came with that initially, where you were like, I'm just a runner. I've had some experience with teaching and so forth, but initially, was it like, oh, where do I really fit in, or how do I address it with other athletes that aren't runners?
Yeah, and I've always had imposter syndrome. I have, I'm a guy with pretty low self-esteem. I'm pretty humble. I'm just a normal person who has sort of been put on a pedestal that I've always felt like I've had to live up to. It's interesting, the way I get over sort of imposter syndrome is someone else decided that, because, Justin Madden said you'll be great as the chair of the Victorian Institute of Sport. And I thought, well, I've never chaired a meeting in my life.
Yeah.
And I said, well, they probably don't know, but I'm a safe bet, so I'll get in there and I'll do the best I possibly can. So I always took it as a challenge to get over being imposter syndrome into actually just making a difference and learning and going through the journey and saying, well, this is an opportunity for me. I'll try and work with people around me to learn how to do this job, and then eventually, hopefully, I'll get to a position where I deserve to be in the job, and then I'll realise that my time is over. So I succession plan, let the next person come through, and then move on to the next opportunity. So that's how I deal with it. I'm a very I say focused. People say anal, so which is probably not a compliment. But so I sort of try to even out my effort over the journey to make sure that I learn. Then I'm very inclusive, and this is what I'm doing on boards. I don't take those responsibilities lightly, and I move straight out of Commonwealth Games, those chef de mission roles, into a board position on Commonwealth Games Australia, and I'm on Athletes Australia board now and Sydney Marathon. So those opportunities, and I got them. I felt kind of a bit uncomfortable with them, and what am I going to bring here? And then I kind of work through that, where I'm very inclusive and part of the team and bring the team together. And then hopefully I get to a stage where I actually realise, look, it's time for me to step off and to let the next person through that's got more to offer or got other things to offer, and that's a process I go through. But it's been an interesting transition, and it would definitely have been the journey that I thought I would be going on, to be perfectly honest. I thought I'd be back teaching or doing something within sort of the Ballarat community more so than having the roles that I've had. So it's been I am in the Sport Australia Hall of Fame. But I'm actually not in there for my athletic performances. I'm in there for my sports administration, which, to be perfectly honest, pisses me off, if I can use that word. Because, you want to be in there as an athlete, and I think I probably deserve to be in there as an athlete from, if you look at my CV. But it's made me think, actually, it's a bit selfish being a successful athlete, and it's all about me. And yet the roles I've been able to play in the last 25 years, I think I've been a sports administrator longer than I've been an elite athlete. And the way I've been able to benefit the communities and the sports communities and the areas that I've been involved in, that's really satisfying. Yeah. And it's had such an impact on a far greater proportion of the population. So it's sort of direct support. Whereas when you're an elite, successful sports person, you're kind of a role model, but you don't know what impact you're having. And you might be, if you do something bad, you tend to find out because, you're on the front page of the paper, or people send you hate mail or something, I don't know, or socials as it would be now. But when you're a role model, you don't know. You think people are following you and
hope you're doing the right, setting the right examples.
Yeah, but you don't really know. Whereas what I'm doing now in sports administration, I can absolutely see the tangible difference that I'm making, and that's really satisfying. It's a long answer. I'm not sure what the question was.
I suppose for me, it's kind of like the lesson that I learned being a captain of an AFL team was that as much as you're striving every single day to be better, and whether it's about best and fairest or more possessions each game, and it's the same with when you're a runner, you want to get faster and hopefully win as many races as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Where my journey changed was actually investing in the people around you and not caring so much about the individual performance, and ultimately seeing other people thrive and succeed was what lit me up. And I feel like that's kind of the journey you've been on the last 25 years, where all those decisions you make and bringing people together and helping people grow and develop in the roles that you've had has almost, not to discount your running career, but it's been super fulfilling because you're losing yourself to the service of others.
Yeah, and and I've got a concrete example of where that happened, and it's a slightly long story, but after Barcelona, when I sort of thought my career was over, I thought, oh, well, I'm not going to stay because Nike would put me up in 5-star hotels, so I wouldn't stay in the village. I was too good for the village because I was an elite athlete. I'm not going to stay in with all those people. And anyway, once I ran badly at Barcelona, I thought, oh, damn, I'm not going to be able to stay in 5-star hotels. I'm going to have to go back and stay in the village. It's like staying in a bloody backpackers hotel. This is going to be terrible. And anyway, I went back in and I'm thinking, how good is this for all the teams going to have me there and they're going to benefit from me, and they're going to be having me there. And it was all about me, me, me. I got back in that village circumstance, Trent, and suddenly I had people around me who were really wanted to train with me and were socially, because I'm a really social person, love a chat. They're running with me. I wasn't sort of getting all sort of self-absorbed by my own performance. They were asking me about their training and what they should do in races, and I'd give them a bit of advice, and I was interested in their results. Suddenly I had this posse around me, and me going back into villages was the best thing I ever did. And my running really improved because instead of sitting in a 5-star hotel for 3 days before an event, looking at the ceiling, shitting myself that I was going to run badly and Nike were going to dump me and everyone was going to think I was no good in the world, I was actually just enjoying this environment of being part of it. And someone like you, Trent, would go, oh, I'm a bit nervous about my run on the weekend. I'd go, oh, other people get nervous. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, you're more nervous than I am. And I'd give you a bit of advice and I'd suddenly think, oh, this is pretty good. I'm not as nervous as Trent is. So why am I getting all sort of worried about this? So it really gave me a great perspective, and it's no accident. My performances really benefited from that. And I reckon that started that sort of mentoring leadership aspect of my life where, it's more fulfilling. There's only a limit to what I could do personally, and yet by mentoring and being involved with all these other groups, you get caught up in so many other fantastic experiences, and that's kind of, that journey's just continued. And you are exactly right. That sort of community aspect and the feeling that you're helping other people is far more fulfilling than your own personal journey.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing. Now, I did say you were known for your mental toughness, your resilience, your ability to continue to just hold on, maybe aside from, well, you still held on, and it was a proud moment. But I like to relate that back to parenthood. Yeah. Because I feel like those traits would have helped you through having 4 kids of your own, along with Tanya. At what age were you when you had your first child? I think it's Emma.
Emma, yeah, who's working
Emma, Laura,
in London.
Matthew, and then
Olivia. Yeah.
And you're obviously a grandfather now as well.
With to Liam, yeah. So our second daughter Laura's had a little boy, and he's a ripper, little Liam.
What are your greatest strengths as a dad?
Nothing. Supporting Tanya. It's interesting. I think Tanya's a fantastic mum and a fantastic person, and she should have been a counsellor, and she's doing some work with. I'm not sure if I can say she's doing work with Lifeline, but she's doing some work with Lifeline, and she had her own tragedy in her own life, and that sort of just steered her into the roles that she's doing, and so she's a very very good listener. Yeah, and I'm not a great listener. I'm great at giving advice, and I did give advice to our kids, and I think we're proud of our 4 kids and now our grandson. So it's a good combination because I tended to be away a lot, and Tanya would be there as the grounding influence on our kids, and then I would go, and then obviously I would have strong input when I was around. But I also think through my various roles that we've exposed our kids to lots of different situations, and they've seen that, and they're actually all involved in sport to some capacity, except for Laura. So she's doing an electrical apprenticeship, but all the other 3 are involved in sport. They're not sports people per se, but they're involved in sport, which is pretty satisfying for us. But I think that's because they've seen that sort of environment through our whole lives. So I'm a support to Tanya, and then provide advice when necessary, I think would be a fair way of summing it up. And I would never downplay Tanya's role, because she's been the core of our family, and it's been
I think
a great
you do
journey.
a little bit of research on guests that are coming on the show, and I think it was you that credited a lot of your success to actually Tanya and the way that she's supported you in the journey from your own point of view. You touched on a tragedy.
Yeah.
Are you able to go into, because I feel like they're the moments in time where relationships really do gel and get tighter, and you know that you're in it together?
Yeah, and it's interesting, because I feel a bit embarrassed about it, because her dad committed suicide, and when Tanya and so we were about to get married. So, but at the time I was at the London Marathon, and
which is the first one that you got paid.
Yes, yeah, in 1989. So I'm away, and the news comes through, and I had that difficult decision to make. Do I stay and run the London Marathon, or do I come home to support Tanya and her mum, and obviously go to the funeral? So I chose to stay, and I'm not sure to this day, Trent, if that was the right decision, to be perfectly honest. Now, I did finish second in the London Marathon. I won 100 grand. We probably bought our first house. It set me off on a career that, I became an international, a professional athlete. So it set us up for life. But was that the right decision? Was it a selfish decision for me to do? I probably look back and think, I want both.
Yeah.
But you can't have both.
Correct.
And these are things in life. And I kind of look back, I think then it was the right decision. Now it was the wrong decision in hindsight. But I can't go back, and I can't change that. So,
have you ever had a conversation with Tanya about, obviously in the initial phase there would have been chaos, I assume, in both of your life, and so many different thoughts and emotions going through it, because no one ever wants to lose a loved one.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate you sharing. Have you had conversations years down the track where it's like, had we had our time again?
I haven't. No. And it's probably, I think we both
just accept it was.
Yeah, move on. And it's not, and I don't want to bring it up, because it's hard for Tanya. And as I say, she's moved on and doing great work in that space that's really, really valuable. And she's actually she's unbelievably good at it.
Yeah. And
without formal training and, doing the counselling. But and I think that's really, it's kind of an extension of how she is as a person, and that's, been reflected, as you say, in that support that she gave me over the journey. And it can be really difficult, and Trent, you're in this circumstance. I'm such a public figure, and we go to places, and Tanya might have been there last week, and the person I'll be parking the car or something, come in, and the person she's sitting next to goes, yes, I'm John, pleased to meet you. Who are you? And she says, I'm Tanya Moneghetti. I met you last week. And because she just doesn't get remembered. And as soon as I come in, they go, oh yeah, Tanya. Oh, that's right. Yes, Steve. And so her to be defined as Steve Moneghetti's partner, that's difficult to go through. And she did that she's still doing it now. Bloody 1989. I can do the maths. 35 years later. So to her credit. And she's embraced that role, and enjoys that sort of the way it's rolled out. But and I think if we had our life over again, I don't think she would do anything differently. I think I would support her to probably when I did retire to probably find something like a counselling course and spend a bit more time focused on a career for her, because she put that career on hold for 15 years while I was indulging.
Yeah. And in fairness, I mean, it's not a job, but some days it can probably feel like a job being a mum, particularly to 4 kids.
Yes.
And
we wouldn't have it any other way, I don't think, at the time. But I think that I would, she probably wouldn't, which is, that's a reflection on her character.
Knowing what you know now about relationships, marriage, parenting, what's one tip you would give parents who are just starting out on their journey?
Have a bit of time for yourself. And running allowed me to do that. So I could go off and run for an hour, where I just go out in the forest and not see anybody.
Your time.
Yeah. So I would think to be able to because being a parent is a full-time job. And so I think giving a bit of space and having your own identity is really important. Yeah. And the other thing I think is there is no rule book, and as long as you think about what you're doing and take ownership of your answer or your dealings with your children, then that is the right thing in your circumstance. And no book or no piece of advice should tell you differently, because if you've done your due diligence, own the decision, and your kids will appreciate that.
Beautiful advice. So for anyone listening, find time for yourself.
Yeah, and that's really, and I kind of did it accidentally. I probably may not have chosen to do it, but I think that's really important, because it's tough. Yeah. And celebrate the good moments, because I think we always hear about, parenting, it was difficult, God, we had this situation, and God, how are we going to deal with that? There's some beautiful moments with your family, and they can be simple. I'm transitioning a bit out of sort of running and public life, and I'm having a few issues myself just in that transition process. So I'm getting some advice, and to be in the moment and appreciate some very simple things. I'm busy with doing all these other things still, and yet we're out at a place just out of Dalesford last weekend with my grandson, and we're just sitting on a tree, and he was just enjoying having the birds and I just appreciated that moment. That was my best moment for the week.
Yeah.
Compared, I'm doing board meetings, I'm going to openings, I'm at everything, and everyone goes, oh no, what about all that fantastic stuff you're doing? What about where you went there and you met this person? No, spending that moment with my grandson was the highlight of the week.
And if you're not aware of it, you can actually miss those moments as well. Like, how many of us would be sitting there and just by habit pull out your phone and you're like, I'll just check the emails quickly while he's entertaining himself over there.
Yeah.
So it's picking up and having the awareness to go, this is actually, whilst it's a small and simple moment, it's a beautiful moment, and these are the ones that we want for and talk about as we progress and get older. Yeah. That's also something that I'm trying to be super conscious of.
Yeah, and I had to learn it. I like you, I would have said, oh God, come on, let's get out of here. Why can't we get back into real life and do important things? So it's been a really important process for me just to appreciate. And yet you'd think I talk about being in the moment, and in a running race, if you're not in the moment, it's not going to end well. Yeah. So I should know better, but it's just been a bit of a learning experience for me.
Touching back on running, I mean, there's been so many moments across time where elite athletes have been either come out or called for doping, and I have heard you speak about your perspective on doping, or if there's allegedly been doping and so forth. And I think I'm going to actually just go back to my notes, because paraphrase, not exactly what you said, but if you said if it was to come out that 4 athletes were found guilty of doping and you came 5th in a race, you would still see yourself as exactly that.
Yep.
Why is that?
Because when you're in the moment, I do the best I possibly can in a race, or in any situation, to be honest, but racing's a good metaphor. So at the end of that race, I've done the best I possibly could. And if that's externally places me in 5th place, I can't control that.
Yeah.
So I don't change the external markers. So if the first 4 get done for doping, what it does for me is it doesn't change that I was still 5th. So I just say, leave the first 4 blank. I still want to be 5th.
Yeah.
Because on that day, that was what I delivered. That was the outcome. And I live with that, and I'm really proud. I've never done drugs. I never will, never have. But what I am proud of is every performance I did the best I possibly could. And the result is if there's 4 people that are better than me, God, why be bitter and twisted? If you're bitter and twisted about that, you're going to have a very unhappy life. So I go, well, that's where I was on the day, and that was a great result for me. And sometimes I think people, I'm not sure, and I'm sort of throwing a question back to you.
That's fine.
The media goes, geez, you were disappointed. You finished in 5th place. So, God, Trent, if you had to kick that last goal instead of, just
I did that a couple of times. I missed them, don't
I? Yeah. And yet, you can't change it. And I want to say to that, but I want to tell them that story, but the media don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm happy with fifth. 4 people better than me. No, that's not going to sell us papers. Give us a better story than that. So, I feel like I'm lecturing, but
do you not feel though, if those, and we're not saying that this happened in reality, but if those 4 racers or runners were doping, therefore their performance has been enhanced, even though it was your best effort on the day, realistically or potentially, I know we don't know the answer to this, your times might have been the best time on the day.
Yeah, and I don't worry. I've wrestled with this
decision. To go, that's just what I need to accept because it can't be changed.
Yeah, and it's those people that have to live with that. So I live with knowing that I did the best I could on that day. And I'm absolutely, I sleep well at night because of it.
Yeah.
Now, I win races, I finish 5th in races. At the end of the day, I sleep well at night. Now, if they need to take in performance-enhancing drugs to get a result that they're searching for, they're missing a lot more than just the win in that race.
Yeah.
So it's a testament to their character. And I reckon in life, there are lots of tests.
Absolutely.
That is one. If they failed that test. Once you fail the test once, it gets a lot easier to fail the test the next time, and it continues to reflect on your personality. And I think, it's to your integrity and your credibility. And I'm here because, I respect you as a person. I don't have to be here. I chose to, come down from Ballarat and got other things on. I'm happy to be.
Appreciate.
Because you are, I admire what you've done. So your integrity stands. That's the reason that I'm here. Not because you're a successful footballer, but because you as a person, I respect you as a person. Now, if you can say that to somebody, that is far better than a result that's on a piece of paper.
I appreciate that, and thank you.
No, it's true.
Speaking of character and legacy, and I've never actually done this on the podcast, but I feel like it'll be a really insightful task. Sometimes I ask people in other things that I do to write their own eulogy just as a bit of a purpose piece, and that's a weird and morbid thing to do. But if you were to pick 3 words that you hope that people define who you are as part of when it's all said and done, what would they be?
Yeah.
Is that too deep?
Yeah, I'll put good in front of everyone. Good contributor.
Yep.
Good person. And it's a bit male, but good bloke.
Yep.
And that would probably, I do some guest speaking still, and I speak about legacy, and in a simple term, I talk about solving world peace, and that's a big one.
Yeah,
it's pretty. I'm not sure if I can solve.
Well, but if you manage to do that, you're a very popular man.
Yes, I'll be very popular. But what I do say is, and I used to do it. I still do it occasionally now. Our next door neighbour was elderly, and she's since passed away. But I would bring her bins in. Take them out and bring them in every Monday and Tuesday morning when they'd been done. So I kind of used, and I tell this story about, well, if, she couldn't because she was in a wheelchair, but, if she brought the bins in for her neighbour and the next person down the street in Ballarat, then, the suburb of Lake Wendouree, they're all getting on well. Then everyone in Ballarat gets on well. Then everyone in country Victoria, everyone in Australia. Trent, you've got a great relationship with your neighbour there. We're solving world peace one rubbish bin at a time. And that's exactly, and that's that you can make a difference in your community by very simple acts. And if everyone does them, the cumulative benefit of is massive. And it's a bit like you're running a marathon in South Africa. You cannot finish that marathon until you get on the start line and you take the first step. The first step is the step to your satisfaction of finishing that race. But if you don't take the first step, the next step doesn't happen, and eventually you add all of those steps up, 42,000 steps, and it's a lot, and you cross the finish line. And everyone wants to see your last step, but often it's just you that takes that first step, and yet that's the crucial one.
Well
Set
done.
you on your journey.
Beautifully done. Well, our final question we like to ask on the show is, if you could go back and give your 16-year-old self one piece of advice that would help you in the journey that's ahead, what would it be?
Be a better listener and remember people's names.
Do you have any tips on how to remember people's names?
I used to repeat it back to myself. I used to be very good at it, and I'm not passing on my own advice, but I'm not as good now. But now I try to relate it to an object or a person I know.
Yep.
So, Trent, I'd think tent. I hate camping, but if I go camping in a tent,
hate camping,
Trent.
hate you.
Yeah, that's right. That memory's etched forever.
Well, Moners or Steve, I've really appreciated getting to know more of your story, some of the trials, the tribulations that have become part of your athletic career, but also beyond that, and the impact that you've had. I've taken away that when it's all said and done, you want to be known as a good contributor, a good person, and a good bloke.
Mm-hmm.
You have complete admiration for your wife, Tanya, and your 4 kids, along with your grandson.
Yep.
And that your bit of advice was to just ensure that you take time for yourself and try to be present. And I think that example of you being at the tree near Dalesford with your grandson is something that you've obviously taken some time to come to that realization, but it's become this beautiful part of your life, because life is difficult. But once we accept that it's difficult and there is those moments in time that are beautiful, then celebrate them as well, and celebrate them on the journey.
And they can be simple moments. They don't have to be the earth-shattering moments. Yeah,
absolutely. And I suppose through your journey, I loved the analogy of when you finally get everything that you wanted from an athlete point of view, you're being paid to do the thing that you love, you're staying at 5-star hotels, but you're quite insular and you're on your own, and it's quite a lonely place, to then be knocked back a step and realize that so much of what you've been missing and wanting for is in the place that you thought wasn't. And connecting to that community and then contributing to the wider community is something that has lit you up beyond your time as an athlete. I think a lot of people can take that away and implement that into their life. And the other thing, the rubbish bins for the neighbour. Yeah. So everyone, after you listen to this, make sure you put your neighbour's bins out for them, because that's the best way to spread kindness. And
although we're up to about 4 bins in Ballarat, it's becoming challenging.
A lot more rubbish maybe, but
I think you get the message though.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. I know our community appreciates it, and love all the work that you're doing out there in the community. And we wish you all the best for the future.
Yeah, I've loved the chat. Thanks, Trent.
Thank you.